Speaker. I know we're running a little short on time, but we'll get things started and hopefully get a little bit more of a chance to continue this another day. But I am very happy to have the chance to speak to this very important bill here today. Like so many other members on both sides of this House, I full-heartedly support strong animal welfare and protection, Madam Speaker. You know, we often think of animal welfare as protecting cats and dogs from abuse and neglect. And it's true. With 6 in 10 families being pet owners, this is an important part of the animal welfare system. But we are discussing more than just our pets here today. We are talking about a framework for the protection of animals in this province. And it is important to farmers that the highest level of care be provided to their livestock. And as an avid outdoorsman, I take the stewardship of our wildlife very seriously. It is our responsibility to do all that we can to ensure the protection and safety of animals in this province. Which is why I am especially proud to stand up here today in support of this legislation, which, if passed, would see the first provincially operated enforcement system in Canada. I want to take a moment and thank the Solicitor General for all the work she has done to build and design a system that would ensure the highest standard of protection for animals across this province. Madam Speaker, when we formed government, we inherited an animal welfare protection system that was completely inadequate and lacked oversight. We took action with our first year in government after the Ontario Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, better known as the OSPCA, ceased to provide animal welfare services. And after passing Bill 117, our government launched a public survey to hear from Ontarians on how to improve animal protection. And to echo the fine member from Etobicoke Lakeshore, the response from the public was overwhelming. Madam Speaker, this is an issue that the people of Ontario really care about. As with everything else this government does, we are listening and used what we heard to inform the content of this legislation. What Ontarians want is a clear and accountable animal welfare regime with appropriate oversight and transparency. And, Madam Speaker, consistency. The same rules and enforcement practices should be there for all Ontarians. The system we're proposing is the product of extensive consultation with a multitude of stakeholders, including humane societies from across the province. These organizations are the front lines of animal welfare education and enforcement, working in the past with the OSPCA. I was glad to have the opportunity to sit down on multiple occasions over the last few months with the Humane Society of Kitchener-Waterloo, Stratford-Perth, to hear their suggestions on the transition from the old Act to developing a new, better system for Ontario. And I'm happy to say that many of their suggestions are incorporated into the PAWS Act we're debating here today. Before I provide a few examples, let me just first thank the organization, staff, volunteers, and the financial contributors for the amazing work and advocacy they do on a daily basis in Waterloo Region and beyond. The Humane Society has been proudly investigating and enforcing the OSPCA Act in the region of Waterloo, in the City of Stratford, and Perth County. In 2018, their agents and inspectors investigated 769 animal cruelty cases, 650 in Kitchener and Waterloo alone, provided pound services for the two cities and Wilmot and Woolwich townships in my riding, Madam Speaker. Also in 2018, they rescued 2,109 animals, successfully adopting 1,626, and they were able to return home 656 of those animals. Above and beyond all the great work, they performed thousands of surgeries and rabies vaccines while also helping 30,000 plus students learn more about animal welfare. Madam Speaker, in April of this year, I sat down with the Humane Society's Executive Director to discuss the need for new legislation. She recommended right off the bat that during the transition period, the province should extend investigative and enforcement authority to affiliated humane societies. That was done. She also suggested that the name of the Act be modified from the Ontario SPCA Act to clarify the responsibilities between a modified SPCA and a new framework focused on animal welfare and protection enforcement. This is being proposed. In a subsequent meeting to discuss ideas for new legislation, she suggested that the government create its own force of inspectors under a chief inspector that would enforce a province-wide model. That is also being proposed, Madam Speaker. So I was glad to share my voice of my local Humane Society and adding it to the thousands of people who responded to a public survey earlier this year asking how animal welfare in Ontario can be improved. I was glad to learn from the KWSP Humane Society that they welcome the proposed changes and are willing to work with our government to get the system right. I've got a release here that I'm going to kind of paraphrase a little bit because it does get a bit into the weeds, but this is from the Humane Society of Kitchener-Waterloo, Stratford-Perth. The Humane Society of Kitchener-Waterloo and Stratford-Perth welcomes today's announcement from the Ontario government introducing a Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act, or PAWS for short, and to share their plans for a new government-focused enforcement model starting in 2020. And I quote, "We are pleased that we are able to step in and provide a lifeline to animals and the government through this recent 6-month transition period," stated Catherine DeLutis, the Executive Director of the Kitchener-Waterloo, Stratford-Perth, I know it's a long name, Humane Society. Today's announcement is a critical first step in establishing a new structure for protecting animals in Ontario. It goes on to say, while Ontario has moved to restructure animal protection enforcement and bring it directly under the government policing umbrella, SPCAs and humane societies will continue to have a role to play in law enforcement, whether to lead, assist, or consult, Madam Speaker. And I look forward to working with them as we move into this new system. Of course, I don't need to remind the members of this House about the legal imperative for passing this legislation. Thank you, Madam.